Hank, obviously the big news, Isaiah Bond signed.
Yeah.
He is signed and in the fold. Like, he didn't wait around for what was going to happen at Alabama. He wanted a piece of Steve Sarkisian's offense. And your thoughts?
Yeah, there's so much to like about this pickup. We were just talking about the Dolphins. I think Isaiah Bond. You don't want to put this comparison on a kid, and that's the expectation. But he's very Tyreek Hill esque in terms of his explosiveness and kind of just one cut go kind of guy. So I think there's a lot to be excited about his game. I think he's kind of just scratched the surface of his potential as a receiver. Again, I wrote on when he committed on whatever day it was this weekend. Um, I wrote, he was recruited as a cornerback for most of high school until right before his senior season. Everyone was, they kind of switched gears and recruited him as a receiver, Alabama included, where he obviously signed. He was committed to Florida. They switched to recruiting him as a receiver. And so that was kind of where he's at. So, you can kind of see, and I think he mentioned it too, he kind of he sees the field a little bit differently because he's seeing it more as a defensive back. He kind of can see some of the things they're trying to do and take that and use it as an advantage for himself. But really explosive kid, a kid that's been running. I think he did junior Olympics and as a like elementary schooler, like he was running like Olympic events or winning golds for his age division back then. He's clocked a 10.49 verified 100 meter. He had the fastest 200 meter in the nation as a senior. I think it was 21 something. I don't have it right in front of me, but really explosive kid, a guy that can come in and kind of replace that Xavier Worthy in your offense that can kind of just take the top off the defense. And so, huge get. It's so interesting to see. Like, we think we have it, nailed down on the receivers they're going after. Last week it was CJ Daniels, the Liberty transfer, or Bryson Rogers, the Ohio State transfer, and then Isaiah Bond enters the portal, and those two guys, take a back seat. They ended up. Rogers is sticking at Ohio State. Daniels committed to LSU. Neither of those were unexpected after Texas started to pursue Bond. And they got it done with him. So, they might not be done. We can talk more about who else they're after, but huge pickup and a guy that's going to make a big impact next fall.
Yeah, that's the thing, Hank. Like, you talk about them might not being done, but how good are the guys that are there coming back, from DeAndre Moore to Jonte Cook, Ryan Niblett? Like, you already got Matthew Golden from U of H, just got Isaiah Bond, the Oregon State brother. I heard he was in town not too long ago. Like, I love it. Get as many heavy hitters as possible, but it also helps me think, is Chris Jackson and Steve Sarkisian not confident with what's already there, which is why they're going so hard after guys in the transfer portal right now?
No, at first, you look at it and you're like, okay, maybe they don't feel good about the guys they have. Like, but if you look at the numbers, like, they're after the transfer portal attrition and the guys going to the draft, they were bringing back, without any 2024 recruits or transfer portal guys, they were only bringing back 3 scholarship wide receivers. So it's like they had to reload here. Obviously, you want to set up Quinn for the best, possible outcome. And, you took 2 guys out of high school in Dubose and in Livingston that probably need a little bit of time to develop and be ready. Wingo, I think, could probably play immediately. Butler as well. He could be a guy that needs a year or two. So you got that. But then, I don't think people are I think people are underestimating like how much they're replacing on offense. We're not even at receiver, with tight end and running back. Those guys had their bulk of catches as well. So I think they want to load up as much as they can. And I was talking to one source, they're actually very excited about, the guys they have back with Jonte Cook. I heard a lot of rave reviews about DeAndre Moore coming back next year. And so I don't think it's any slight at, what those guys have done or have shown. I think they're excited about them. I think they just want to help, Quinn Ewers. I think they want to build up this explosive offense and, get the guys that want to come. And so I think with Bond, that's 9 scholarship receivers. And again, Silas Bolden is a guy that they're still pressing for, the Oregon State wide receiver. And, obviously he's a little bit different of a build. He's sub 5'10". But, one of those guys that, can play in the slot. He's all Pac-12 return specialist, so can certainly contribute on special teams, kind of in that Keelan Robinson type role. And so, I think they really wowed him this weekend as well. I actually think they probably, he even said, Texas is the team to beat for him, But I think, this could be one that, he maybe commits sooner rather than later instead of taking his other visits. So that just shows you, what they're doing. And then there's Ryan Williams still out there who's, 11 days away from his official visit to Austin. And a guy that, nobody's going to say no to Ryan Williams if he wants to come. There's a spot for Ryan Williams wherever he wants to go. So, yeah, certainly still some interesting moves we're tracking.
Well, that's the good news, the excitement, the positivity. Bo Davis leaving. Can you give us an update on what's going on with DeAndre Robinson and where things went with Jamari Caldwell?
Yeah, so Jamari Caldwell, I think obviously it's not a huge surprise. I think he would have ended up at Texas had Bo Davis stayed on the staff. The Houston defensive line transfer we're talking about. He actually committed to Oregon this past weekend, so it's not a shock. That was once we found out he wasn't going to stay at Houston, Texas was the team to beat. The Bo Davis news comes down, and it's kind of to be expected. So not a huge shock. Obviously, that's a guy they wanted and could use. So it hurts in that regard, but not a surprise. In terms of the 2024 signees, DeAndre Robinson, there's a lot of buzz and some reports out that he's looking to get out of his letter of intent. I think he is weighing that option. He didn't arrive with the early enrollees this past weekend to move in, so I think that's a telling sign in terms of what he's looking at as but does that mean he's not going to consider Texas? I don't think that's the case. I think maybe he wants to take a step back, see who Texas hires, and then maybe make a final decision. Obviously, classes started today. They have kind of a little bit of a window they can, mess around with and figure out what they're going to do and get in time for spring. So that's something we're tracking. Maybe we'll hear some more about that today. And then Melvin Hills, obviously, the other defensive line signee. I don't think he's as serious about, maybe backing out of the class as, I don't want to say, I don't want to start speculating. I think he's taking more of a patient approach instead of saying, hey, I want to get out of my letter of intent. Hey, let's see who they hire, go from there. Because obviously both these guys have strong relationships with more than just Bo Davis. So certainly two guys we're watching. Alex January, he's all Texas. He's ready to go. He's moved in this past weekend. He's going to go with whoever they hire. So that's obviously something we're watching. We'll see how it affects the 2025 class as, junior day comes up this weekend. But certainly a big development there that kind of got overshadowed by the Saban news. Bo Davis went to LSU. That was a huge story for about an hour and a half. And then Nick Saban retired. And that's been the talk of college football ever since.
Yeah. What do you think happened with Dominick McKinley? Because it seemed like he was showing interest in Texas and then he ends up committing to LSU.
Yeah. So I think, there was a lot of buzz about, Bo Davis and, being tied to LSU prior to him even departing. So I think that's something he was looking at. I think I think Louisiana kids, they want to go to LSU a lot of the time. It's not often you pull the elite talent out of Louisiana. Those guys are looking for a reason to go to LSU most of the time. And so I think that's kind of, where he felt pulled. Obviously, all the staff turnover at Texas A&M. I think if Elijah Robinson had stayed at Texas A&M, regardless of Jimbo leaving, I think he probably would have stuck with A&M. But once Elijah Robinson went to Syracuse, I think that was kind of that was it for the Aggies' chances. And then it became either LSU or Texas. And I think, you usually give the edge to the home state there. And then, but the thing is he hadn't signed. So once, he did commit to LSU and he still hasn't signed. But then obviously Bo Davis comes over. So I think that, officially probably closes the door on the chances for anyone else to change Dominick McKinley's mind. But, Texas liked him. They need to get some more interior defensive line guys. That's certainly something, I think they're going to still be active in the portal going after and trying to retain obviously DeAndre Robinson and Melvin Hills too. They don't want to lose those guys. They took their commitments for a reason. So yeah, so it's an interesting position group we're going to be watching.
Hank, Jahdae Barron coming back is huge for another year. I saw the video of him and Michael Huff, or Michael Huff's giving him his number 7 jersey. So it seems like Jahdae's going from 23 to 7. But, he didn't have the year that he did in 2022 and 2023. So it's probably a big reason why he came back. But that's just huge for Texas, for leadership and just his presence as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw some guys exit in the portal. They're going to be – there's new faces on the back end. There's some guys returning. But to have a guy like that, kind of like that heartbeat of the – I mean, I almost kind of a comparison to Jalen Ford almost. He was kind of that quarterback of the defense, and obviously the inside linebacker usually is. But a guy that, that heartbeat, that really that leader people can rally around. I think Jahdae Barron could even play that role in the secondary this coming up year, and for guys to kind of learn from, he can kind of teach them, show them the ropes, and help these younger guys that could potentially make an impact year one. Not even younger guys. Makuba is going to be technically a year one guy at Texas, so to have those kind of veteran voices and players in the back end, that's huge, especially going in to a schedule where you're going to be facing some really talented passers in 2024, whether, we'll see who Michigan gets, but, Georgia, obviously Carson Beck and the offenses you're going to be facing in 2024, to have those that presence back there, that's going to help a lot.
Well, and Quinn Ewers, we haven't had a chance to ask you about Quinn making it official that he's returning for the 2024 season. What kind of impact do you think that has on the team, on recruiting?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think that's probably a good part of the reason Isaiah Bond committed. I think obviously, he loves Sark and what he does as an offense in the offense. And, Arch is going to help guys too whenever he gets his chance as well. But Quinn Ewers is, top 1 or 2 quarterbacks back in the country next year. Top receivers want to come catch passes from them. People see what Adonai Mitchell was able to do this year. He's getting, first round buzz in mock drafts 1 year with Quinn. So I think that was a huge reason why. I think it helped with Matthew Golden. I think it'll probably help with, these guys, not some of these guys. Everyone's like, oh, well, they're getting Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden. You got to imagine guys are going to enter the portal. It's like, I don't think so. I think these guys are pretty excited about, what the staff has envisioned for them and, how they can utilize them in this offense. And, I think they're excited about playing with Quinn one more year. So huge, news there, recruiting wise. I think that was one of the big reasons for Isaiah Bond. And, it's probably not going to help with 2025 receivers, because you got to imagine that Quinn's going to go to the NFL next year. But, just to kind of keep putting Texas on the map and showing them, just how special, of an offense that they can run under Steve Sarkisian.
Well, and let me go back to Bo Davis for a second. There's been talk about he was a good recruiter. Yeah. He was not a good recruiter. Maybe more of a developer than a recruiter. Can you kind of give us your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. You talk to people that he recruits. They absolutely love the guy. And, I covered him for a year at Bama when I was covering him. And, he got, I forgot what the class was, but, he had some big name guys and, everyone raved about him. He's really strong in the Houston area. He's just a solid presence to have on your staff. And of course, obviously, probably one of the best defensive line developers out there. So, there's no doubt it's a loss. I think, a lot of these 2025 kids we've talked to really loved him. So it's going to certainly be something they have to replace. And again, we're seeing it affect, whether DeAndre Robinson wants to stay in the class or not. So, that was one of their biggest defensive pickups this cycle. So, certainly, no one person is like the reason, it's a good sign for your program when other top programs are trying to pull away your coaches. And, I think that's just a testament to, what Sark's built and the guys he's bringing in. And again, in terms of new guys, Johnny Nansen, we're seeing the Arizona team that could be in the college playoff next year, all gunning for him to be their head coach. Obviously he didn't get the job, but they were all hashtagging, hire Nansen. So Sark's going to hire, the right person for this job. And I think, we'll see the results come on the recruiting trail.
Yeah. And talk about that. Johnny Nansen as a recruiter, the poly whisperer.
Yeah. That's what Greg Biggins said his nickname was. Whether he be at USC, UCLA, Washington, Arizona, he's landed some major recruitments. I think we talked about it last week, but Talanoa Hufanga, the All-Pro safety, he was his lead recruiter. I had the list posted, so I don't have it right in front of me, but he's been the Pac-12 Recruiter of the Year according to 24/7 Sports. And again, you're seeing it just with the relationships he had at Arizona. All these guys, a lot of them, their decisions on entering the portal or not were hinging upon whether they hire Johnny Nansen as head coach. So to have him as a co-defensive coordinator and linebackers coach, I think it's huge. And, I've talked to a couple of recruits that have raved about him. Anthony Williams, Deuce Williams, the new linebacker commit in 2025, really liked him. He was being recruited by him at Arizona. So obviously that translated over to Texas. And, I've talked to I was talking to Kendrick Blackshire earlier, the Alabama transfer that visited this weekend. And that was the first coach he brought up. He was like, this new linebackers coach they got is the real deal. So, I think he's a huge hit with recruits, and I think we'll continue to see that kind of trend, this spring, assuming, there's buzz that he might go back to Arizona as defensive coordinator. So I don't want to like put anything out there, but he was a very good hire.
Hank, Amari Niblack, tight end for Alabama, entered the transfer portal. And after Brock Bowers and JT Sanders, I thought he was the best tight end in the nation. That somebody that athletic, that fast. He has wide receiver speed at the tight end spot. Do you think Jeff Banks and Steve Sarkisian are going to take a look at him?
I think they probably will. I don't as of like us being on this show, I'm not sure if he's actually put his name into the portal yet. I think he's like, it's that intends to enter the portal, kind of in limbo. So I do think, if he does, that's going to be a guy they take a look at. Cause we've seen, like, again, they're bringing in the Stanford tight end transfer, Ben Urasek. The dates to be determined. Pete Thamel reported it yesterday, but it looks like they want to bring in a tight end, and that makes sense in terms of the depth they have coming back. With Jatavian Sanders going to the NFL. So I think Amari Niblack. We saw him. He kind of busted onto the scene against Texas in September. He was a guy that everyone wanted to see more of, but he just hadn't really busted through yet. As a standout guy on the offense, and then caught the touchdown against Texas, and he had a pretty strong season after that. So yeah, that's good. That could be a guy that's just kind of in that mold of JT Sanders that they could look after. And this Urasek kid from Stanford, I mean, he's career has like, I think 1,300 yards receiving. He didn't have a huge season this year, but a guy that was a 4-star recruit out of high school. And obviously Stanford always has a good tight end or two. So if you can get him out of there, that's a big addition as well. So that'll be one we're watching also.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Ben Urasek. He's, would you say he's an all-around tight end? He can block and catch? Yeah,
I would. And I think, one thing to maybe like follow on is Georgia wanted him. So it's like, if you need like help with an eval, it's like, oh, this kid's looking at Georgia. Let's take a look at him, because Georgia has, first-round tight end after first-round tight end. After what they did with Brock Bowers, or any tight end from Northern California. Those guys seem to work out at the college level usually. So, but yeah, no, I think he's kind of one of those all-around guys, a guy that, it's a young tight end room. You only brought one in the 2024 class. So, someone that can come in and kind of similar to defense, the guys they're bringing in on defense in Makuba or Trey Moore, a guy that can, provide that veteran presence.
Yeah. Last one for me, Hank. Jabar Muhammad, what he brings to the table, Washington corner into the transfer portal, Texas kid, cousins with Malik, everything just makes sense going Texas's way, kind of like an Andrew Makuba situation. But I heard he's been getting, the same love from Oregon, which would be really mucked up if he goes to the rival school of Washington. Hey, we're in a different era. What's it looking like for Jabar right now?
Yeah, playmaker. Obviously, Texas reached out, went and visited him. Terry Joseph went and saw him on, I guess it was Saturday night, in the Dallas area. So it makes sense. He's got, he could probably pick where he wants to go. He's a really talented kid. Showed out in the playoff. The buzz late, like the last day or 12 hours or so, I feel like Alabama's kind of starting to make a move there, because they're losing just about everybody in the portal. So, they're going to need I shouldn't say everybody, but they've been taking some hits the last few days. They saw Des Ricks, their 5-star freshman corner, enter the portal. They're losing Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold, both their starting corners, to the NFL. So, they could use an instant impact guy on that back end. So I earlier, if you asked me yesterday, I probably would have said Oregon, but I think Alabama's kind of making it interesting here. There's buzz he might visit Texas this week. Certainly something we'll watch, but I wouldn't pick Texas just yet for Jabar Muhammad, despite, the home state, his ties with Malik and, all that. I think he might look elsewhere.
Wow. Hank, anything else at the top of your notebook? I got a lot going on.
Yeah, no, I obviously Junior Day this weekend. The list is like, name a 2025 recruit, and they're probably coming. Like it's a long list. I don't have it pulled up right in front of me. So that's something Jordan and I and Tommy Ayers are going to be covering on campus this weekend. So that'll be a real big one. Maybe we'll see some good news out of that. In terms of the portal, I mentioned Kendrick Blackshire. I wrote on Sunday night, I think that, I like where Texas stands coming out of his visit. I still like where Texas stands. I think, even with David Binda coming back, to get another veteran linebacker back there, add some depth that has SEC experience, I think that's big. And I think that's what, the reasoning Texas is looking at him there. Silas Bolden, the receiver from Oregon State, keeping a close eye on him. I could see him making a decision relatively soon. I think Texas is in good shape there. I keep saying it, but they're doing really well. So those two guys, we'll see what happens to the defensive line. That's something we're following closely. Obviously, whoever Texas hires the defensive line coach, that's going to, kind of lead us to some more conclusions as to who they're going to go after or be able to keep. And then, obviously we'll track Ryan Williams and any other transfer portal developments. But yeah, plenty going on. It's a pretty wild time.